We want people to have a place to go, to be wanted, to be accepted, and that's why we put on Labeled Fest, is to destroy those stigmas that are out there and take the label off of people and accept them as who they are, which is people.
I struggle a lot with remembering certain appointments throughout the day.
Please tell me what felonies can I have my son commit so I can get him arrested and I can get him into mental health court, because that's the only way we can enforce services or medication. That is what is wrong with our system.
There are still going to be days where I'm going to struggle, but I know that, but I also know that I can get through it.
And how we can wrap services around them, whether that's mentorship, it could be a daily or weekly check-in.
It is important for people to know that they are not limited to what people think of them. We want our message to be, you're awesome, I'm awesome, let's do something great together.
Yeah! Rock and roll! Howdy there, my name is Derek Zanetti and I make music called the Homeless Gospel Choir, and I'm right here in Cambridge, Massachusetts making punk rock songs for the people. Hopefully you guys are doing okay wherever you happen to be, and hopefully you enjoyed tonight. Thanks a billion for coming out. Well, of course, I'd rather sleep on your front porch than on your cat piss stained apartment floor. I wrote some songs about my life, and I don't sing about politics anymore. I'm just kidding. And you can bet until my last breath, I will do my best to never second guess that from here on out, all these songs are about how we are gonna weather this storm together. They say that you gotta write the songs about the things that you know about. And I'm just writing songs about the things that are inside my mind. I'm still alive, and I have survived. And I could stand up tall with pride to say that I haven't tried suicide in the last 5 years. That's not to say that I don't say bad days, that I don't curse God's name or puke at the sight of my own face. I just found a better place where I can be myself all by myself. some people say that, you know, being out on tour and being a musician is like living the dream or whatever, and I agree that it is very fun and freeing, and I get to go ahead and make art and make friends every day, and that makes me feel really good. But it can be exhausting at times, and I just wrote a song about, you know, be able to just find little safe places inside my own mind and inside of, you know, groups of people who care about me, and just finding a respite from some of the craziness. There's room for you, buddy, if you choose to smile and say, oops, you to those Monday blues, and throw away what you hold on to if it brings you down. So, tell the truth, what are you gonna do until you turn 92? Doing what someone tells you to, or standing up against all of the bullshit. Well, I have a therapist, and we have discussions about what's the best for my mental health, and sometimes we do breathing exercises, and sometimes we listen to certain meditations and things like that, and that seems to be helpful for me. Also, trying to have a diet that is conducive to good health is also important. Making sure that I'm surrounded by people who are encouraging, and being able to recognize whenever I'm having bad thoughts, or thoughts that are dark, or thoughts that might not be beneficial to my well-being or the well-being of people around me, and being able to identify those thoughts and address them as they are. I might be poor, well, that's for sure, but I'll endure, and I'll stay out on tour. Maybe. And I lied to you when I said that I don't sing about politics anymore. Thanks, we'll see you guys in the show.
For me, recovery begins with honesty, and not just any old honesty, brutal honesty. Taking a hard-ass look at myself in the mirror and telling the truth for once. And you know what? The truth is painful, but taking that step is life-changing. It's incredibly life-changing. It's hard. It's really hard. I want to have it all together. Like all the other people I know, they seem to just, even if they have issues, they get through life like normal people. And people think I have it all together. I mean, I got this wonderful career. I get to travel. I've got a wonderful woman in my life. I mean, what else can I want? Inside, I'm a mess. I'm just a complete mess. And I get triggered when I interact with women, and I love women. I mean, I don't know, like, it's like a power struggle, and I don't know what to do with it. And it makes things weird. It's messed up a lot of work situations, and definitely impacted my relationships with women. And I don't know, like, I don't know what to do with it, you know? I was walking down the street the other day, and in my suit jacket, looking all confident, a beautiful woman passes me by, and beautiful body, beautiful smile. And we had a moment, we made eye contact. It was a good moment, and you felt that connection, you know, that magic. And I wasn't sure what to make of the experience, you know? Should I have turned around and pursued her or talked to her? Or was that a sign that I need to have my guard up because she's trying to get in? Like, I don't know. And all I want to be able to do is just have normal interactions with people and not feel this struggle. And what it does is it puts me in this painful place that I can't get out of. I keep replaying it out. That's the problem. I keep replaying this shit over and over again. I just obsess and obsess and obsess. I can't get out of it. I'm in a prison. I think about what life would be like if I could just wake up and not be depressed in the morning. If I could just have a good night's sleep. If I could just walk around on the street and enjoy my walk without having to battle with this stuff in my head. These thoughts wake me up. These thoughts of women from my past who hurt me. I've been hurt, you know, and I don't trust women. I don't trust women at all. I don't know what to do with it, you know. And truth is, I got mommy issues.
I want my mother.
You know, I got mommy issues. I miss her, but I don't. I miss her, but I don't. I miss her because she was my mother, but I don't miss her because there was just a certain part of her that was not emotionally available to me. I remember times when I was younger and I got yelled at for stuff and I just felt humiliated. And my mom just let me just sit there and feel that way. 2 seconds on a street is stuck in my head and I can't get it out of my head. And you know what? No matter what, it goes back to mommy. Because that little 2-second interaction with that woman was not about that woman. It's about mommy. I gotta think about her and it just messes me up. Messes me up. I'm a mental health motivational speaker. Hate that term. Never ever wanted to really be a speaker. I still kind of don't. But it's interesting because in my work, my job is to help people like me who are going through this stuff and give them tips and inspiration and resources. And I love doing that. I love helping someone else. Like, that is life-changing. But at the same time, you know, it feels like it's not fair. Because I'm sitting there doing all this work, speaking about mental health, writing about it, talking about it on the news, and I'm the one that has to go home and struggle in pain privately. Hope. They talk about having hope. I want to feel hope. This group's been great for me. This peer support. Because I've learned a lot from all of you and like the different stories you've shared about stuff you've been through and the friendships I've developed and conversations, the real conversations we've had. Some of us, I'm grateful for it. And I hope there's a bright future for me. Because you know what? I deserve happiness. I deserve happiness. I deserve to be happy. And I want to learn to enjoy stuff in life. I really do. It's about time.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Labeled. This is our first Q&A, and it is a new experience for us all to be doing this online. And I'm sure everyone has been on multiple Zoom meetings and multiple Skype meetings and multiple whatever screen sharing meetings over the course of time. So I hope that this is still a way that we can get good content and good tips out to the world. So I'm very happy to be joined with OC87 today. And I'd love if you can give me a quick overview, introduce yourself, and tell us all about the great work that you're doing in the mental health sphere.
Sure. Well, Brian, thank you so much for having me and for sharing a couple of our films via Labeled. My name is Gabriel Nathan. I'm the editor-in-chief of OC87 Recovery Diaries. And basically, what are we? We're a nonprofit mental health publication featuring stories of mental health empowerment and change. And we really do that in two main ways. The first is through the personal essay. So we publish one first-person mental health recovery essay every single Wednesday on our website. It's OC87recoverydiaries.org. And we also produce one short mental health documentary film every month. And we publish that on the site the last Thursday of every month. So one essay every week and one film every month. And really, these stories are designed to bust stigma surrounding mental health and demonstrate recovery stories of mental health empowerment and change.
Cool, wonderful stuff. It's certainly our mission. We're certainly going in parallel, and hopefully someday the roads will converge, and we will end up, as you say, busting stigma in mental health, because it is a terrible thing that we all have to deal with. So can you tell me about how the organization actually got started? What was the initial seed?
Sure. So our publisher and founder is a gentleman named Bud Clayman. And Bud was a film student at Temple University in Philadelphia. And he was dealing with obsessive compulsive disorder and bipolar, Asperger's, and OCD. And he ended up kind of falling apart while he was a film student at Temple. He lived in transitional housing for about 10 years and really got his life back together to the point where he made a full-length film about his mental health recovery called OC87, the Major Depression, Bipolar, Asperger, OCD movie. So it's a full-length documentary film. And Bud was touring this film around film festivals all over the country in around 2008, 2009. And when Bud would do talkbacks like this one, just, in a space with actual people, which we will be able to do again at some point, Bud was really struck and moved by how, after watching his film, people in the audience were moved to share their own story of mental health recovery, or the mental health experience of a sibling or a parent or a spouse. And, everywhere he went, these stories kept popping up. And so Bud said to himself, God, there's so many people out there who have stories to tell. And by telling mine, I have kind of empowered other people to do that. He said, I want to give people a platform to tell their stories. And so he created OC87 Recovery Diaries as kind of an outgrowth of his film, so that we could tell those stories. Mm-hmm. So that's how the site was created, and that's what we do. It started out very informally with 3 employees meeting at a local Starbucks and kind of posting content whenever we came upon something or it found us. And it's now grown into an organization with 8 part-time employees. I'm a full-time staff, and kind of regular content to the point where we have to turn people away, and we have an editorial calendar fully scheduled through late November with just stuff ready to go, and it's really wonderful how the organization's grown since it started.
Fantastic. As I say, it's just a wonderful thing to put your life towards, and help others. It's very beneficial for ourselves. So on that aspect, can you tell me how your attitude to mental health has changed over the years?
How my attitude? Well, so I live with anxiety and depression and obsessive compulsive tendencies. And so I was raised in a house where, we're kind of like middle-class Jewish suburban family where everything is fine and you don't talk about anything that isn't fine. And, I joke and I say, even now when I go to visit my parents for dinner, there's a list of things that you don't talk about. Like I just bought my father a bicycle, and the text message back to me was, "Don't tell mom." Like, really, about your bicycle? But there's all these things that we're not supposed to talk about for, I have no idea even what reasons, right? But mental health was one of those things growing up. And I remember when I was 10 years old, and I was super, super anxious kid and forcing myself to stay awake all night long and biting the edges of my glasses and my pencils out of anxiety, telling my mom that I needed to talk to someone, and I was dismissed. "Oh, you're fine," and I clearly was not fine. So, my house of origin was one of a lot of shame and stigma, I think, prevented these issues from being talked about and from help being gotten early. I didn't start seeing a therapist until college, when I could decide, I didn't have to ask anyone's permission anymore, right? And I basically haven't stopped going since. I've worked in a locked inpatient psychiatric hospital and been exposed to all kinds of individuals struggling with suicidality and homicidality and inability to care. And from all of those experiences and through working at OC87 Recovery Diaries, my mind has really been opened to a full spectrum of mental health, from the provider side, from the patient side, I'm a suicide awareness advocate, so from the advocacy side. I really try to read each submission that we get with eyes that are fully open. And, I'm not going to look at this as a former inpatient provider, and I'm not going to look at this as a peer. I'm going to look at this as a human being. How does this story resonate with me on a human level? Because we're not, and I just listed diagnoses. I have this diagnosis, that diagnosis. We're not diagnoses. We're not a cluster of symptoms. We're human beings. And whether we're diagnosed or not or whatever. So I think that's the biggest way that my perspective has changed, where I really see mental health as just a human thing. We're all affected in some way, I hope that answered your question.
No, it certainly did. And again, from the end of your answer, that's why Labeled exists, because we're trying to get away from the negative labeling of people. We have a diagnosis, but we're not that diagnosis. And we look at all those negative aspects.
Why do diagnoses exist? So that clinicians can get paid. They have to write something down after they see you, and they can't bill for spending a nice half an hour with someone. They have to put something down. That's why a diagnosis exists. Bottom line, so the provider can get paid, and so that someone can get access to the treatment that the provider believes they need. And that's, to me, that's where the identification should end. It's much more about being human and what do I need? What kind of help do I need to live a more functional life, really?
Of course. Yeah, and we because of, again, all the negative labels that come into play, like crazy, psychotic, off their rocker, like all of these things, but we don't look at the positive ones, because in my experience, especially with myself and a lot of my friends, the creativity that comes out of mental health is phenomenal. The problem solving, the conflict resolution, the ability to move forward in the darkness, especially nowadays, like with the lockdown, with all of the COVID stuff, everyone is experiencing some form of mental health now.
Yes.
Yep. And it could be the first time that they are ever experiencing anxiety or depression, and they don't know what to do. Whereas people that have had a lifetime experience of living with their shadows, we have been able to exist within this new existence a lot easier, and keep moving forward and know, yes, today is a bad day, but tomorrow is a new day.
Right.
let's have positive interactions, positive communication, so we can all move forward. So that'll lead us into the next question. So the two films that we've shown tonight were the Bipolar and Punk and OCD. So I'm sure there have been experiences that you've been involved with when showing these films to somebody. There has been a great story, or somebody has talked to you after one of the screenings and it has possibly changed their life. Maybe not changed their life in that exact moment, but given them help to take one step forward in a new positive direction. And do you have any stories like that you'd like to share?
I do. We actually did a screening of a couple of these films at WHYY, which is the Philadelphia public television station, a local PBS affiliate. And it was a live screening event. There were about 100 people there. And we did a Q&A afterwards. And a young woman came up to me, big mound of blonde curly hair, and a real vibrant presence. Like the personality matched the hair. I said, "Hey, my name's Laura, and I've been kind of following the site quietly, on social media from a distance, and I've been reading the stuff, and I've been watching the films, and when I heard that you were doing an event in the city, I really wanted to come, and I'm so glad that I did. I dragged my friend here, but I think she had a really good time too." And she said, "I have bipolar disorder, and I have not been really vocal about it because of shame. And, I'm scared that I'm going to lose my job, if my boss finds out I'm bipolar. And I do this support group online. But other than that, I don't really, talk about it." And she said, really kind of seeing these films and seeing the people up there talking, really kind of gave me the courage to think about writing my own essay. And at OC87 Recovery Diaries, we make all of our authors, it sounds kind of harsh, but we make everybody use their real name. Mm-hmm. Some websites publish stuff that's anonymous. Some will publish stuff by my name's Gabriel Nathan, so by Gabriel N. We don't do that. For the reason really that we believe that there's nothing to be ashamed of and there's nothing to hide from simply by telling your story. And that how do we move the needle of shame, by letting people know that it's okay to tell your story, and put your name to it. And that's how change happens. So anyway, fast forward, I guess it was 2 years later, I get an email from this woman, Laura, and it's her personal essay. And it was really born that night 2 years earlier when she came to WHYY studios and saw the films. And the medical director at the hospital that I used to work at used to talk about planting seeds, and just casually mentioning something to someone and walk away and let it sit with them and let it germinate. And they may not be ready to hear what you have to say at that moment, but they're going to go away and they'll be discharged, and they'll be home and they'll be doing outpatient, and maybe a month or maybe a year from then that seed will flower, right? So with Laura, it took that time, but all through those 2 years that the sunlight was coming down and that was being watered, and she's got a lovely essay up on our site, and it's got her full name there, and it's a really cool thing. It really is.
Great. We'll try to put the link into that so people can go and read that story.
Wonderful.
But it is exactly, just lay the seeds, and that may take 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, whatever. But it's wonderful when it sprouts and it blooms. It's so gorgeous, and then we can get a lovely flower bed that we can all look at and make a lovely picture. So, and again, moving on from that, do you have any tips for somebody? Because again, one of the biggest steps is to ask for help. I always say that the two hardest questions is I don't know and I need help. So a lot of people will try to start the journey internally themselves before they even put the hand out or put their hand up or send a text, whatever. So do you have any tips for anybody that's watching tonight that may be in that position that they just want to tell their story, even if their only audience is themselves. What do you think on that?
Well, so I think there's two questions here, really. I think if I'm hearing you correctly, there's one question is, so someone is trying to get ready to tell their story, or thinks they may want to get ready to tell their story in a creative way, and let's say in a personal essay. And then there's the person who is struggling and needs help. So those are two very different things. I want to address both, actually.
Yep.
So the first one, someone who's thinking about getting ready to tell their story and doesn't really know where to start or how to do it. The advice I always give people is, so like our personal essays are between 1,200 to 1,500 words, okay? You cannot tell your story in 1,200 to 1,500 words.
Yep.
You can tell a portion.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes people get overwhelmed, like, oh my God, my mental recovery journey, like, how do I even do that, right? Start with a moment, just one moment. Describe sitting in your therapist's waiting room for the first time. What was that like? What was the picture that you were looking at on the wall in front of you? I know my therapist, it's lighthouses. You know, they all have something that they think is peaceful and whatever. So it's also phallic. But, you know, hey,
well, and we all know that
talk to my therapist about that.
Yeah, and a lot of lighthouses are all haunted too. So
exactly right. So for me, I might start the essay describing the lighthouse, right? Describing the picture, and then moving into what was that first therapy session like, and talking about that dynamic, and was it working? Was it not working? Were you anxious? Were your palms sweating? All you want to do is focus on a moment in your recovery story. That way you can go into really beautiful detail and tell that part of the story. And I think that really takes the pressure off people. You don't have to tell your whole recovery story ain't been written yet anyway. So you can't tell the whole story because you don't even know what it is yet. But I really encourage people to focus on a moment. You can start at a really dark time. You can start at a really hopeful time. You can start at a time kind of in between. Maybe you want to talk about your relationship with medication. How has that evolved? Maybe you want to talk about yoga or whatever. Just stick to one thing. And then kind of see what comes from that.
Yep.
Related to the person who is struggling internally and needs help, you know, where do you start? For me personally, I think the place to start is with the recognition that you deserve help. And I think that for so many people who are suffering, we have this kind of subconscious barrier to asking for help because we believe that we don't deserve it. I've heard over and over and over again from myself, first of all, but from patients at the hospital, from people who I've met through OC87 Recovery Diaries, through suicide awareness advocacy work. I didn't believe that I was sick enough. I wasn't sick enough to need help. Well, I only have depression, but so-and-so has bipolar. Well, I only have bipolar disorder, but they have schizophrenia. So we do this kind of suffering Olympics where we striate mental health, and well, we're only at the bottom. Well, yeah, I experienced childhood trauma, but that was decades ago. You know, shouldn't I be over that by now? We tell ourselves all these stories to mitigate our own need for help.
Yeah.
Everybody needs help. Let me tell you something. Everybody needs help, and everybody deserves it. So you don't have to, would you wait to put a Band-Aid on yourself only until you look like nearly headless Nick from Harry Potter and your head's falling off your neck? No, like you take care of it when it's a cut, right?
Yep.
Same thing with mental health. Why do you have to wait until you're in crisis at 3 a.m. on a street corner? Like, it doesn't have to get to that point for you to deserve help. So acknowledge that in yourself, that whatever you're feeling is valid. And there's all different levels of help available, from simply texting or phoning a friend to a peer-led warm Line to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline to crisis residential programs to outpatient providers to partial hospitalization to inpatient to mobile crisis. There's so many different levels of care that are available. Take what's yours. Go get it. Go get something. Go get help. It's okay.
It certainly is. So, well, that was a wonderful answer and a lot of tips and a lot of great resources for people. So, as we wind up now, can you tell me what's next for OC87?
What's next? So we are currently putting together a beautiful film about a physician at Einstein Hospital that really, it focuses on the putting on of all of her layers of personal protective equipment, simply just that she needs to do her job. And by the time she's done, like our cameras went into Einstein and kind of filmed her in a really beautiful way, getting ready for her day. And by the time she's done getting dressed, she looks like she's going to go clean up an oil spill, and it's a shocking thing. And she really talks about the mental health toll that takes on her, doing that every single day and kind of looking like some kind of space creature. And she carries around a picture of herself so her patients won't be scared, so that they know that there's a human being under there and what this is all doing to our mental health. So that is our film. It's coming out in September. We're doing a YouTube live screening on World Suicide Prevention Day, which is September 10th, of a couple short films related to suicide prevention. So we'll have information about that available on our social media. And other than that, we're just business as usual. One essay a week, one film a month, like clockwork. And we're very proud to be able to do it, even in these times.
Fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank you very much, for taking the time to be on Labeled, and again for the mission that you're doing. It takes. Well, King Arthur had his Knights of the Round Table, and you're certainly one of the Knights of the Mental Health Round Table. So together we can keep moving forward, and as you say, bust stigma in mental health. So thank you very much.
Amen. Thank you, and thank you for everything that you do. It's a joy to be here.
Great.
Hey everyone, I'm Valerie Cameron, and thank you so much for joining me in this presentation called Animated Ideas, Pixar Interpretations of Mental Health and How They Help. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm dealing with mental health, I reach out to entertainment and something fun. And Pixar has made it so easy to deal with mental health issues. And I've selected 3 movies today that's going to help us and help others get through some of the main mental health issues that we deal with. It's going to be all about the feels, you guys. The 3 movies I have chosen are Inside Out, Finding Nemo, and Up. I'm sure if you're familiar with Pixar movies, you understand that they know all about how to get us to our feelings and quick. We usually need tissues because we're going to be laughing, crying, and most of the time, adults feel these feelings more than kids when they're watching the movies, which is great because sometimes we don't understand how to deal with our feelings, but also there are a lot of movies that we can sit down with our kids, watch them, and help them through a situation that maybe neither of us understand. The first one that I'm going to talk about is near and dear to my heart, and it's called Inside Out. This was a very groundbreaking animated movie, and we're going to talk about depression. Now, depression is a really confusing thing to go through, especially when you're a kid and you're not sure about any of the feelings that are going on in your head. So Inside Out brought all the feelings towards us, and we jumped inside of Riley's head. This is this cute little girl up here, and we see all of her feelings: fear, anxiety, anger, joy, sadness. Like, we see all of it. And she deals with a lot of change, which depression and change, at least in my life, they kind of go hand in hand. And when you're a kid in school and you have a lot of change and you start feeling these different feelings that are sad and anger and anxiety, it's kind of hard to feel joy. And the character Joy in the movie feels like all she can do to help Riley is to get rid of all of those very sad feelings. Well, sometimes we feel like if we don't acknowledge the sad feelings that we have, that we're automatically going to be happy, and that's just not the case. I don't know if you were told when you were younger to, make sure nobody sees you cry, make sure that you're happy and smiling all the time, but that doesn't always work, especially when you're going through depression. Her parents are also dealing with a lot of those feelings, and they're not quite sure what she's going through. So they're all kind of going through ups and downs together. But what happens with Joy is she's constantly arguing with sadness. There's this thing that goes on in Riley's head that sadness and joy back and forth just can't seem to get along together. And boy, isn't that reality, right, you guys? Like constantly we're trying to deal with our sadness. If we're happy, what's going on? And I feel like this movie was so true. And I sat and watched this movie in the theater with my daughter, who was just turning 13 at the time. So, okay, here comes adolescence and puberty. We watched the movie. At the end of the movie, we had such great conversations about all the different changes that were going on in her life, changing schools. We were changing homes at a time, and then puberty is coming with boys. And you know what happens with depression, if you've been dealing with it for a long time, is that as soon as your hormones kick in, that depression kind of ups itself by 100%. And so dealing with her and this movie, it helped a lot of us, me and my family, be able to talk about our feelings together and say that it's okay to acknowledge all these feelings that you have in a healthy way. And here are some cool ideas on how to do it in the movie. Plus, these characters are just fun, guys. Like, it's seriously a really fun movie to watch. And if you don't cry when you meet Bing Bong, I don't even know. Like, it's so great. The next movie that I'm going to choose actually came out when my daughter was a toddler. And if you've had any young kids, if you're a parent or a grandparent, or you have nieces and nephews, you understand that when you watch them, you're going to watch a movie that they love over and over and over. And that was exactly Finding Nemo. And I did not know when I started watching Finding Nemo with my toddler daughter how much this movie was going to help her when she grew up, because my daughter actually suffers from severe anxiety, which started in elementary school, and we're still dealing with it today, and she's 19 years old. So this movie, dealing with anxiety and with trauma, it covers a lot of topics. Now, Marlin is Nemo's dad, and he sees a very traumatic thing happen to him, where his wife and all but one egg, so basically his kids, die in front of him. And I mean, that's very traumatic. Most of us deal with a lot of traumatic things, and sometimes during elementary, high school, and even our adult lives. And so we kind of have to realize that those are going to make some impacts on us. This also deals with control. Usually when you have depression or anxiety like me, I also have some control issues. And when you go through something traumatic, often you want to control everything around you. And Marlin becomes a super overbearing parent. My mom was definitely one of those. She was always worried about us, which made me worry. And that trickles down to, everyone in your life. And so so many real life things happen to these fish that I can totally relate to. And the anxiety that comes along with the trauma and the control can actually lead to you missing out on things in your life. But once Nemo actually gets captured by a scuba diver, both Marlin and Nemo have to overcome a lot of things in their life that they never thought they would have to before. They both have to ask for help, which was very hard for them. They both have to realize that they're strong enough to overcome a lot of the really bad obstacles in their lives. And they make friends that they probably would have never made because of the trauma and the anxiety that they had before, which is so cool. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see that big shark right there. I don't know that I'd want to be friends with the big shark, but we realize that these characters in this movie, once we get to know them, they all have problems and anxiety just like we do, which is kind of in real life. So Nemo is definitely a great one to sit down, watch with you and the kids, and kind of talk through these lessons. Pixar seriously knows how to pick their characters, and they did it very well in Finding Nemo. Now, Up, oh my gosh, Up. If you have not seen Up, you don't know that you're going to go through, I mean, a whole box of tissues probably the first 10 minutes of this movie. The first 10 minutes of this movie, you see Carl, who is the man here in the glasses, meet this young girl who becomes his wife, and they just create this amazing bond together. They grow up together, they get married, and they have this life together that they plan on going on this amazing trip to a destination place. Well, when they're a little bit older, Carl's wife passes away. Now, I saw this movie, and a few years later, my mom passed away. And I know that my mom was the love of my dad's life. And for him to deal with that grief on losing the person that has been your life for so long is super hard. And then to deal with that just as a kid is super hard. And this movie shows that change can be really hard. And Carl holds on to things in the past that he didn't get to do with his wife. But throughout the movie, we realize that he had such a fulfilled life with her, but he's just not seeing it. And if you've ever gone through grief or loss before, sometimes you realize you can kind of be a jerk. And Carl was kind of a grumpy old man that didn't want anybody on his lawn or his front porch. And then comes Russell. Russell is this cute little boy that just needs some help from Carl. He's trying to get his badges. And so he shows up on Carl's door one day and telling him he just needs to walk him across the street so that he can get a badge. Well, of course, Carl wants nothing to do with this kid because he's super nice, he's different, and he just doesn't want to deal with anything outside of his home that doesn't remind him of his wife. And by the way, on the outside of his home, everything is coming down around him. He is the only house that's still in this area that's now being demolished to build big sky rises. So what do you do when you're dealing with loss and grief? You try and hold on to every single thing that reminds you of that person. And for him, it is this home that he built with his wife. So he puts balloons up the chimney, and he is bound and determined to take this home, which reminds him of his wife and symbolizes his wife, to the destination that they wanted to travel to together. Now, this is totally ridiculous, you guys, but it very much reminds us of the things that we want to hold on to in our lives that remind us of those people that we've either lost from death or maybe lost from a breakup, or they moved away. Like, there's a lot of different loss and grief that we have to deal with in our lives. And this movie deals with that because Russell is also going through some loss and grief because the dad that he wants to be around in his life just isn't there. And he's looking for it and trying to become something that he thinks his dad will stick around for. Him and Carl become really good friends. And of course, it's a ridiculous journey where this house goes to this very far off place where they meet birds, dogs that talk, they have adventures. And they both realize that they have a very full life. They've met each other as friends. And just because their life didn't turn out the way they planned it to be, doesn't mean that it's still not going to be great. And they both allowed people in. Now, of course, Russell, being a kid, he's going to believe and allow more people in than Carl, who is kind of stuck in his ways. But together they become this misfit team that just makes you happy and cry at the same time. If you have not seen this movie, Up, I do think it's more for adults than for kids, but I think across the board, it can help anybody deal with loss and grief. There's a lot of times when you go see a movie and you're feeling feelings that you never want to feel in front of people. But I have talked to my therapists about this movie. I have talked to people about how movies and escapism, and especially Pixar and Disney movies, have helped me through so many different areas in my life and make it so much easier for you to sit down with your kids and have an example of something for them to see, because I'm a visual learner. And if I see something, even as ridiculous as a house floating in balloons, and you tell me that that's me holding on to my mom and everything that I love about her, it's going to make me feel better inside. So with this grief and loss and Up, again, I got to tell you, this is a perfect example of a movie, and an animated movie at that, that can have you feel all the feelings, have good conversations with the people in your life, and realize that allowing people in, even if it's a talking dog, you're probably going to have a better life than you did before. So those are my 3 movies. I hope you enjoyed the presentation on my interpretation of mental health through Pixar and how it can help us every day. Inside Out, Finding Nemo, and Up are just 3 examples of Pixar movies that are greatly helpful for mental health. Get out there, watch movies. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this amazing mental health conversation.
My understanding of mental health has changed significantly over the years, really starting when I was younger and struggling with my own mental health. It's something that I never talked about, and really struggling as a young person to the point of suicide ideation. What I've learned over the past few years is that we do need to have these conversations, and that we do need to do more from a public policy perspective of helping people, of making sure that we have resources available to people for their own struggles.
Everybody out there has a conception of what mental illness is and what mental health is, and often it's mistaken. It is as rich and unique and diverse as the individuals who sometimes suffer from these challenges. And it is about recognizing the humanity and the dignity of the person who is there. Because we have too often allowed the characteristics of an illness be the description of the person, rather than look at the person themselves.
Ending that stigma may be the most important thing we can do. It's interesting that the way to end the stigma is to talk about it. And yet we sometimes feel uncomfortable. I encourage people all the time to tell their story, not just to others who might be suffering, but to tell their story to the politicians, to those who have access and the ability to make change, so that we can provide access to mental health care and make sure that we have the funding that's necessary to help people that desperately need it.
So then that begs the broader issue that we need a greater community involvement. So we destigmatize this, and that this is not something shameful. You and I would not look differently at somebody who had cancer. Well, we should not be ashamed of if somebody has a mental health challenge. And so there's a social community component of that.
Alliance House is in the Salt Lake area. We work with adults with mental illness, and our whole philosophy is non-traditional. We're non-clinical. We don't do medication or therapy, but rather it's a holistic approach of working with individuals living with a mental illness to empower them to live productive and independent lives, and not seeing these people as their diagnosis, not seeing these people as mentally ill, rather seeing them as somebody that can contribute to the community. And they come to Alliance House, they volunteer to be here, they help us run the nonprofit. We are deliberately understaffed so that we need our members. Alliance House could not be successful without the members. And it then leads to transferable skills so that our members are able to go out further into the community and make connections and live very meaningful lives. Alliance House is a perfect example of a resource that's available in the Utah community, and knowing that these resources are available for you or your loved one, and they are low cost and they're effective. And then also talking to your friends and family about what they're doing, having those honest conversations and reaching out to these resources when they need them.
How do we have an open and honest conversation with our community when these issues come up? And how do I get to use the privilege of my office with other policymakers and to say, what are we doing
why are we not doing enough so we can move the policy in the right direction.
What it says to me is there are so many people out there that are struggling, and oftentimes we think it's just us. We think we're all alone. We don't realize that in a room full of people, there are many that are having the same thoughts that we are. And there's something liberating. I think there's something helpful about that, knowing that we're not alone, knowing that someone like me has had those very same thoughts and those very same trials and concerns, and that there is help and there is hope. That's how we improve, and that's how we convince people to stay.